Very good. First of all, if you all leave a little early, I just want to wish you all Merry Christmas, great New Year, and best of 22. And 21 was bad for us, but just wish you the best in case you guys leave a little early. And as you can see, I'll be 35 years old and still smiling. And there was one item from last time that that was discussed, and I know Bill brought it out. And it dawned on me because I had a discussion with him afterwards, and really it was one of the discussions of somebody that had done a process. And Bill brought it up that PPE is the least issue. And if you see and I actually, by the way, my fancy pen now works. Did not have a battery, but one thing that I actually did not realize that the most effective component of the control of it by CDC is literally trying to remove the hazard out of that place. The second one is replace the hazard. Then we talked about controls, administered control, then PPE. PPE from all this particular hierarchy is the least amount of issues. You have to do it, no questions asked. And I'll show you some of the other slides. Anyway, that was one part. So the engineering controls, ventilation system, et cetera, is far more important than the guidelines of how you are manipulating the people, the traffic, et cetera. And finally, you're talking about their PPEs. Of course, no one says you should not do a thermostat, a body thermostat, right, at the people's entrance of the doors. No one says all the above is not important. But the most effective is first get rid of the actual hazard and move down. Anyway, that was something because it was a Bill brought it up in the discussion, and that was very interesting. And I had to sort of address this. Then the other part was, again, the most effective part is eliminate. The least effective part was the issue of PPE. But if you go and address this everywhere else, you see that PPE has become the number one issue. I'll leave it at that for a building. One of the very, very good sites, and I don't know if you all have been here with this, is the whole building design guide is controlled by the United States government. It has, God knows, the amount of information that is there. Now, all you have to be within the WBDG site and then just move around and hover, try to identify what subject are you looking for. It is a government site, and the element of it is that because of COVID-19 being the hot issue, they do have a lot of topics for the architects, engineers, management, and so on and so forth. So if you simply go back, they do have a topic called the updates, so industry updates. But the reason I brought that up, I was looking for something, and if you all remember, I said something about essential workers, and when President Trump identified meatpacking guys as essential workers, the essential workers were not here. None of these, the healthcare, the chemicals, communications, defense industry, the critical manufacturing, essentially made the meat manufacturing a critical manufacturing, as you can see here. Food and agriculture to a certain essential, water, waste, transportation, etc. So essentially, one of the reasons the big box stores were open, i.e. Home Depots and Lowe's, etc., because they were considered as part of the construction, part of the facilities, etc., and they became essential workers. And that's one of the reasons they were open. But of course, with restrictions. One of the other components was that, again, this came from, I believe, WBDG, This was one of their news articles. What is happening to a hospital bed? What was very interesting is that, again, if you looked at some of our discussions, the remove carpet, that's essentially there. Portable equipment, because you want to do the cleaning process of vinyl furniture, primarily because of this, trying to clean the space and be able to clean it, sanitize it, et cetera, et cetera. The other issue that we discussed, and the discussion of the weight factors, the probability of failure, et cetera, that would be a 2-hour discussion for me. I didn't bring it up again. However, a spread of simply a very good cough is approximately 40,000 droplets per cough, and that would spread approximately 26 feet. So whatever you're doing, how many, based on the discussion that we had, how many droplets require for somebody to get infected and possibly get hospitalized? So again, imagine a normal discussion, we are looking at 6, you're gasping, you're running, et cetera, it will be 8 to 12. And again, a giant cough goes 26 feet, where really now, if you recall, when we discussed about some of the items, 40,000 will be one number that I want you to remember. Some of these discussions I am now bringing back from last year as a very, very quick review. And by the way, both Princeton, MIT has videos, and multiple videos of this are out there in different formats. This is one that I picked up. And of course, what is the effectiveness of a mask? And this must be some British journal or something where it's all in meters. But again, it was a vapor particle, and that's what happens in a normal settings all the way to the cough setting. Again, this was another issue. If you recall, we went through the hierarchy. The 6 feet is completely immaterial in a restaurant setting that I gave an example last year, where one person, infected person, infected all of these other individuals, and these desks were 15 feet apart. And the main issue, if you recall, ventilation engineering control was the main issue. 6 feet simply goes bye-bye. And I have been, of course, I have all the 3 vaccines in me now, but I was right after this place, I had to go to a engineering, not a party, but it was a small little gathering with manufacturers, and everybody was congested there, everybody was there, and the air conditioning was on. But I could be my own problem, because I did go assuming that I was vaccinated, but ventilation was running very, very much in that place. The other item that we discussed from last year was different surfaces. Again, if you are submitting plans to City of LA, the paper bin sits there for 24 hours. It goes to the individual, comes back when he is submitting back, it goes to a bin, and then 24 hours later. So 48 hours for a cardboard or your drawings is now in going through some sort of a environmental survival period because of the, by the way, there's one item that I have to give you. It's called half-life. As a nuclear engineer, I can tell you that if you have a median of this coughing that is processing, within 1 hour, 50% of all that 20,000 cough, if they were all infected, would be still there. Another 1 hour, 50% of that. So from the 20,000 goes to 10,000. Another hour of that would be 5,000. As you can see, what's called lambda, the half-life, that was the half. So it was 40,000, 20,000, 10,000, 5,000. Here's 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, and so on and so forth. And again, within the 24 hours, it's the one which we discussed. And copper, I have actually studied, because of pain and all the wonderful stuff, copper, for whatever reason, the copper life expectancy is far less. Now they are trying to put aluminum oxide. They're putting elements onto drywalls and into the plasters, etc., to be more antimicrobial surfaces. So these are some of the items from last year. Again, MERV 13 only cannot capture 0.12 micron, and HEPA filter will not capture a virus either. And what is the percentage of that? It's the following. If you have a HEPA filter, it only captures 99.97% of all microns, but above 0.3 microns. So 0.3 microns or less, it's going to pass through. Now, I did some study with MERV 16. Again, it's not possible. And what is about what are the issues of HEPAs? HEPAs have a very, very, very high static pressure. So if you have a pump or a fan or a system that you have, and you got a MERV, a HEPA filter, it starts with 1 inch of static pressure through the filter. So that has to have a 2 inches of static pressure, because all of a sudden your pump factor will be high. So it is not. And also HEPA filters are very, very thick. You know, MERV 13 is approximately a 2 to 4 inch space. With HEPA, you're looking at 1 foot. So imagine, it's very difficult for you to go out there and try to retrofit all these buildings, but you cannot. And then is it efficiency? Hey, HEPA cannot capture the virus anyway. So those are some of the issues that we discussed a little bit last year. And hocus pocus is hoc as corpus. This is the body. Came from the Latin words, and the guy simply says, oh, they said a statement. They said, this is the body. This is the body. Hoc as corpus. That's magic. That's where hocus pocus came from. And the reason I brought that up, this is an actual brochure from our buddies with Southwest Airlines, the peanut guys, that it says, oh, you're doing this every 2-3 minutes, and we got HEPA filters. So that means that they're doing this, and yet the virus is just passing through the system. And that's something that is a myth. Now, these 7 items, I simply modified my last year's statement for ASHRAE. I made a very, very short brief of the equipment items, and it was only a 10-minute speech that I could do. I simply broke it. So this is a very micro version, a reminder of what we discussed last year on part 2 of my discussion. Number 1, I learned long time ago, many years ago, some 20 years ago, I was doing all over, as being a nuclear engineer, I was doing all these biological effects of EMF. If you all remember, they were in the news, and I was going from one court case to another court case. I learned the following words as prudent avoidance. If you can design the system that the infection process simply comes down or becomes zero, i.e., as we discussed in the elimination of the CDC hierarchy, if you can use the prudent avoidance, you will do your first judgment. The first item is to make sure you do that. And if you recall, we said as an architect, you're doing the programming, you're doing the layouts, et cetera, et cetera. So if one group works here and this other group works here, et cetera, you now have made sure that this group will not contaminate this, et cetera, et cetera. There is another item for you. When you're doing schools, if you recall, if you have done the schools, you will see that they got these barred units, which are in each room, or each classroom will have one set of air conditioning units with its own outside air, its own return air. The reason is that the second grade will not contaminate the first grade, and so on and so forth. So that was one part. Security zones, hospital sections, and all that has been laid out by all these other groups. And again, Bill sent me a little guideline from NIH, and I have this here, and I will discuss. So prudent avoidance is whatever you can do, please do in avoiding this thing. That's one. The other one was isolate the ventilation system. And utopia is one HVAC per room. Guess what? All these portable air conditioning, portable systems for classrooms in high schools, it's a utopia because that classroom will not. Now, there is something called VRF that I will show an example. We actually took a city hall. They got the budget and we're encroaching because it's a lot of money. So we are doing in a piece by piece element, and we are changing every room will have a thermostat, will have a outside air, etc., with their own return air. So that becomes utopia. The other item that we discussed, and again, would be a system where you have each individual will have it, each individual will be controlling it. Each one of these will take the outside air on its own, and the return and supply and everything will be within one zone. No cross path of people circulation, either traffic-wise and or breathing-wise. Remember, during the school year, they say, oh, one guy got it. Please, please, please do not let your kids come to school because of cross-contamination. This was a discussion that we brought in. WBDG actually says, hey, change your recovery room even, because what happens is take the carpet out, modify all these fancy furnitures, make them all vinyls so you can wash them, etc. Everything will be smooth, no joints, no grout, washable surfaces, so on. The other one was, this is an anti-Title 24. I can tell you from now, there's one period, very, very short period, when people were still able to smoke inside the offices. ASHRAE came out with one. By the way, the building code says 15 CFM per person. And then ASHRAE went and said, if it is smoking, etc., go to 20, even to 25. If you do LEED, the LEED says you have to be a 15 CFM for a basic. But if you want to get additional points, you have to be 30%. In the following cases, you have to increase the outside air. The maximum and air conditioning, a regular normal air conditioning that you can have right now is 50% outside air. Now, the problem is that if you are in Palm Springs, what happens is this air goes inside the room. Here is the room, and then you insert, and this, I'm sorry, this getting recirculated. And this is your return air, and this is supply air. We are bleeding outside air because of the building code. Building code mandates so much outside air, which is 15 CFM per person to come in. The question is, forget about that. This air conditioning, if it actually has a 4,000 CFM system, bring 2,000 CFM from outside air. Now, what happens to Title 24? You can kiss Title 24 goodbye. The only time that you could bring a lot of outside air in was because of the economizer. I do not want to get into that factor. The economizer simply says, if the outside of this boundary, if the outside is 70 degrees or 75 degrees or less, turn off the compressor on the system, just invite the outside air in. As long as now you're getting your 75 degrees temperature inside the room. That's economizer. Now you're saying, hell with it. Bring 50% because we do not want to take that return air system continuously running around the room, recontaminating. And don't forget, remember, half-life of this virus is 1 hour in the room. So every time that for every 1 hour, it actually survives. Within 1 hour, 20,000 of that droplets go bye-bye. Now, the other issue that you have is simply, this is the other item, reduce the flow of air through the filter. What does that mean? What happens is this: Q is the flow rate, is velocity times the area of the ductwork. If the velocity comes down, which means the area has to go up. So if this is 4,000 CFM, please have your engineers design the area to be as large as possible. Why? The slower the particulates pass through the filter, the better capturing is, because the filters, they themselves are not very, very efficient. Okay, so you give them more chance for the particulates to get captured. Now, there is another item, actually is in the next item, which I don't know what I did with the heading, which was humidity. This is April air. I actually have a sample. The company gave me a sample I'm playing with. And in multiple occasions, I have actually designed a very, very expensive home. I've actually designed a fire station. I've also designed, this up just this year, and a city hall where we are actually putting dehumidifiers into the system, so that the reason is the following graph. The optimum zone for a virus to not to survive or flourish is in a 40 to 60% relative humidity. So if you are in Louisiana, or if you are in Palm Springs, you're not doing good. There, you have to increase the humidity towards 40 to 60. And if you're in Louisiana, which is always humid, you have to play with. So at the end of the day, you have to have 4-hour zone, you have to have this. And you go back and say, Saul, what are you talking about? Los Angeles, if you look at the Los Angeles, because I was doing a job there, I'm actually doing the lead there, is that the curvature of Los Angeles in terms of the humidity is approximately this. It's about 60 to 69, and sometimes in summers a little less. So 69 and 50 or so here. The problem is this: Costa Mesa, and by the way, Costa Mesa, this side of 405, not Newport Beach, okay? We are collecting in one room in a fire station. We set the April air. We had it there sitting and going in for an entire day. 5 gallons of water was getting withdrawn from that room. And we were in Costa Mesa, California, okay? And that means that the humidity that we were collecting, and by the way, we set that thing to be at 40%. At 40%, we were just sucking this water out of that room. So humidity control, again, another factor that you can see, that the virus has the least survivability, or its half-life is far, far less within this range. And the optimum is 40 to 60. By the way, just an FYI, this was that space that we were looking at, and we had it humidity control. And you see this 60 to 80% relative humidity. It was monster. I'm telling you, I thought we are in Louisiana. So that is another announcement. By the way, all of these were last year. There is a UVC, and I'm going to be telling you about a story, and hopefully Bill is in the group. And I was going to ask him a question to input to this group. What is happening is the following: a UV is a set of lights that it's within a certain range. It's actually, if you see, is somewhere about 220 and somewhere 300 or so. This is the relative curvature of the again, right here is a 265 nanometers ideal, and then it produces. So what it does is this: what UV does, it does not kill the virus. I have a 6,000 gallon koi pond in Newport, and I have about 68 GPM of water going through. And by the way, it's the pond is still there. And in summer, because of the sun, the UV, the algae are out there. And in the winter, it's less because there's no sun. What UV does is simply breaks down their DNA and RNA and actually disrupts them. They cannot produce. So they technically, they cannot reproduce, and that's how they die. They don't die, they simply cannot reproduce. Let me leave it at that. The most ideal is the 222 with kryptonite and chlorine, is the with a lamp that we have discussed, and we'll be discussing very shortly. So, by the way, there are UVA, UVB, and UVC. I actually, at a 99-cent store, I bought a little device, and my wife went out there and bought 2 devices, very expensive ones, and they are supposed to do something. They are little ones, and you do ABCDs to them. Are they effective? Really, I have not tested, and we'll discuss about the testing shortly. So G, I went through ABCD, now I'm at G, UVC, and we do have those in the air conditioning system, and they were there for many years, and maybe at least 20 years. And we were actually trying to kill the algae, which are in the condensate pans, etc. And I can show you many good pictures of that. The last item, not last, but H item, is bipolar ionization. What was bipolar ionization? Very simple. There's the only one, you and I actually, I can go to the couple of electronics store, and I can build it in less than a day. Essentially, all you have a plus or minus, and that you simply magnetize the air, and as the air is passing through, it ionizes them. Once they are ionized, the particulates become a plus and a negative. They simply collide and they become fat. And guess what? Remember, I said a 0.3 micron or a 0.5 microns for MERV13 and 0.3 for HEPA filters. Now they are fat enough. The 0.5 micron is captured. Your MERV13 will work. They're not that expensive. There are different manufacturers out there. One, which I'm not going to be giving their names out, but they're like $300, $400. It's very simple. They're only 5 volts, so you can plug it in anywhere. Just put it in the return air. Once it is there, there will be enough time for this ionization. Now, if we go back to the pop quiz that we discussed, I remember I asked, why would you have the ceilings to be dirty? The actual forces called van der Waals forces. Van der Waals forces. This was a German guy that identified, hey, all particulates in the air, and if you have a light passing through, a very heavy light through the curtains, you see all these dust particles, which are all shining through, and you can see them. There are many particles there. You ionize them, they simply capture the first particulate that they can see. That's why your desk gets, the walls on your desk gets dirty, or your regular walls or the ceiling, the gravity, because as soon as it reaches to that point, the van der Waals forces capture it, its particulate has been captured, and the gravity goes bye-bye. Anyway, if anybody, a nerd asks you, why, just say, hello, it's van der Waals forces. So the reason you have this UL listing is the following. If you create too much ionization, you're going to be getting a lot of good ionized or the air, and that will actually work against you because of Title 24. Why are we worried about CO2 sensors? CO2 was because when the CO2 is generated, the film, which is across the hemisphere, not hemisphere, but the entire atmosphere, that gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And the UL 22998 standard certification, you want to make sure that the ionization does not kill. So that's an anti-Title 24, by the way, just an FYI. Let me just go back on the eye, re-examine all the ventilation path to minimize the supply return path. That's, if you go to the outbreaks that we discussed last year, when you're doing these crossing of the air, that is not good. All you're looking for, what we call in a hospital, if you have designed a hospital, it was called laminar flow. Let's call this a laminar flow. By the way, I do not want to become, because I used to be a professor, I can talk about laminar for 5 hours. I have to stop. I have to say zip. So that was called laminar flow. And if you were doing different rules from class 1 to class 1,000, 10,000, et cetera, the velocity of air, the number of air changes, and all that, and your filtration system you wanted to capture. That was laminar flow. In the particular restaurant that you saw, in the example that you saw, there was an air conditioning path here, air conditioning path here, air conditioning path here. This was the path C, path B, and path A. The majority of the 31 people who got contaminated were in path A. This path C, all the chair tables there, did not get contaminated. That's one of the issues. So you are no longer in an island that I'm going to put this. No, utopia does not exist. You got to go throughout the entire process. Now, I don't want to do that now, but this was a discussion, and Bill has trained me so highly on the UV system. This was in Peru. You have to go through an ultraviolet chamber. Guess what? It is awful. Okay, it's not. You have to have a certain glasses, et cetera. It's bad for your skin, et cetera. So I talked to one of the manufacturers, a lighting manufacturer, and he flatly said he will not get, and in the last year's discussion, I did show some manufacturers are getting into this realm. The majority, they were doing it for hospital cases, but now they're essentially advertising for us as well. But I can tell you that UV system can only operate when humans are not there, or at least is indirect. So this was, by the way, this was a very recent article, very recent. So one of the other issues that I was looking for was the following: guidance in preparing for people to go back to work. Okay, this is OSHA, and OSHA simply gives you all the guidelines for workplace. So when I went into that, it gives you some of the controls, and again, they call this SARS-CoV-2, and they discuss all the issues, and again, the hierarchy of that we discussed all the way from the most effective to PPE. And then when you go through the process, I simply picked up the engineering controls, and I also picked up the administrative controls, right? It's somewhere between your world and my world. So you have to do this. At the same time, I picked up some buzzwords, which was ventilation rate, efficiency, efficacy of the filters, providing physical barriers, making sure that the contacts are not there. If somebody's passing through a drive-through, if somebody's dropping something, just drop it at a certain age. By the way, if somebody dies out of COVID, hypothetically or technically, you cannot be in the mortuary, though that would be a setting. Then when you go to the administrative controls, we have discussed this from mask, from the making sure that you stagnate. This has been discussed over and over, and you have been there and you've lived through this what I would call a movie theater that we are in, and we are part of that set. And when you look at some of the other issues, for example, Food and Drug Administration, when I was there, they only talk about PPE, et cetera. Apparently, other discussions are not for the general public. It's for risk and assessment group, Bill Calvert's point of view, and all those. But so those are some of the, and then I am looking for AIA. I said, God help, please help. So when you look at the AIA Illinois, they put a little package. It was not very bad. And I won't discuss, there was other AIA packages. As you can see, it essentially mimicked what OSHA had provided to very, very large extent. And then some of the administrative control. They did bring a little bit more engineering. They did to talk about ventilation rates, cleanable surfaces, reduce the density and all that. So again, administrative controls, all that, essentially they all have been taking the same song, let's say Adele's song, and everybody sings it in a different tune with a different cello and different violins. So the one issue that I did bring this thing up with is the following. When you're looking at OSHA, and by the way, if somebody wants to sue somebody illegally, if you go through all of these and we want to find out who is the governing group, CDC, WHO, OSHA, and ASHRAE, in all of those sincerely they address engineering control, or all those other administrative controls to be part of the elements. So let's say, for the sake of argument, and I always use Jacobian Myers as an example, you are here an individual and you design this particular building and somebody gets ill. We have more attorneys in this country than the entire attorneys in Europe combined. I was also talking to with USC. By the way, just to let you know, next week on Zoom, if any of your staff wants to be, I'm doing a session on programming and analysis for the ARE exam for them, and possibly it'll extend, it goes from 9 to 12. So, what Doug Noble said, for every architect getting a license, there are 25 attorneys getting a license in being an attorney. So, and by the way, the only reason in Chicago the attorneys have their hands in their pocket because it is cold. In every other cities, their hand is in somebody else's pocket. So this is a building that you design, somebody gets COVID, and they go to an attorney, an ambulance chaser, and that guy comes in and sues here, and it sues what we call et al. Et al. In Latin means et ali, and others. That includes my grandmother, your grandmother, anybody's grandmother that they can sue, they will sue. Essentially, you design the building, they go in through the process, and they come back and they, by the way, guys, this was the guideline printed X number of years ago. Let's say for now, this is March 2020. That's when I saw this. But CDC, WHO, OSHA, ASHRAE, etc. You must have been designing this building with all of these guidelines embedded in your design. Just an FYI, I had to bring this slide just to tease you with some of the other items. And AIA Illinois created this spatial connectivity between people, how you are setting the people up in terms of layout, etc. I really enjoyed the way they are trying to maximize this. By the way, you have an occupancy ratio, right? The occupancy that you're supposed to have in different people. Oh my goodness. In a way, the area was 15 and the airport was 6, etc. All of that could be modified in a courtroom setting. All of this could be reduced based on the fact that now you have this guideline in a grid setting. And if this is a 6 feet isolation from this individual to that individual and that individual to that, that becomes 12 feet and this becomes that 12 feet. Let's say this is 12 feet. Now that part that you thought you could have a courtroom or a setting, etc., you can simply tell that your code, your occupancy density is completely goodbye. By the way, just an FYI, I'm doing this restaurant and the guy says, I have 183 individuals in that restaurant and I only have 24 chairs. And so give me a break. Imagine the number of bathrooms that you got to have. So this was actually the settings that they had in that same AIA Illinois paper. I was looking again for more useful packages for us for this for here. I got to tell you, this was one of the best articles that I found. Nakla, Megahead, and Ehab Ronaim, whoever they are, on Elsevier, which is a very, very much of a scientific publications, public health emergency COVID-19 initiative. Please, if you have it, when you get this thing, please download it. They did a very, very, very good job. I really enjoyed what they did. And there are a couple of slides that I'm going to show you. God bless both of these individuals. They did a fantastic job. And one of the tables that I really enjoyed, they simply said, Scope, post-pandemic urbanism, research area, digital transformation and telecommunication, research questions that you could be asking from somebody, by an architect or a school or an institution. That would be the question. Can we design cities to reduce infection? Would the post-pandemic era generate a new urbanism base? By the way, again, in the last discussion, I did a lot of video series, and I showed you some of them. God bless the guy, architect out of New York, who did a fantastic, and please go to it. It was by Wired magazine, WIRED. And again, another question, scope of work, centralization, decentralization, density of cities, walking, cycling, public transportation. This simply says, more specifically, could COVID-19 be a catalyst for decentralization or walkable cities? Those are the questions. Post-pandemic public spaces, these are the critical mass questions. And now these will be the questions. I'm going to read you just one of them. Can air-conditioned shopping malls continue? I can tell you that because of a friend of mine who owns 49 shopping centers, he is having a hard time. And most of those are simply, he actually started a series in building multifamilies across, and he's now doing something in North Carolina. His shopping centers are not doing good and becoming these big boxes are going away. And I know if you go to my home with my kids and all, when they're home, all these little Amazon boxes are coming in. And I can tell you the food that I purchased for my koi ponds, kois, is coming on internet, just to let you know. So all those questions, there's more questions. Post-pandemic housing, post-pandemic offices. Again, as I mentioned before, in the 3 high-rises that I work, or not really now, this year, no work, only a 10% of the people are there. And there was a lot of the questions. So this was building, construction, and technology. In another session that we were doing for building optimization, that I was a panelist, I forgot who the individual was. They were looking at what was called micro or modular buildings. And is modular construction going there? I forgot who the gentleman was, but on the construction, he brought this issue up, and their exercise is going higher and higher for multiple reasons. I'm a modular guy. I've been doing modular systems quite not extensively, but I have had my share. So the reason I brought this, when you download this from my blog or you pick it up, 80 fabulous. If any of you wants to go into this in depth, I could not resist not to show you this. This is 80 fantastic references. One was better than the other. I tested several of them. In the last year, the seminars that I had were Chinese, especially a guy named Liao, as well as a guy named Zhang, Z-H-A-N-G, had the highest number of publications. And then this was one of them, but I highly suggest for anybody who wants to do further research on this to use this, and it's available now through this. But the reason I really liked what they did was this particular figure. And again, I'm going to stop somewhere between 5:30. I think we are going to be there soon, but I really want to spend time on this. So imagine this is an environment of the virus that wants to enter to this bubble. This is your bubble. You will do your social distancing. You will do your quarantine measures. Now you are essentially doing protection of some sort of a defense mechanism. You create layers. You create multiple layers with precision, and you create multiple defense system, and you create just to make sure the bubble that you're in is there. The beauty is that I really loved it because we were looking for a session name, and Jeff called it Lessons. Oh my goodness, look at this. Lessons learned from COVID-19. This article that those two individuals put in, it was so befitting. And if I just would have had another 2 hours. I will only discuss that article. They did a fantastic work, and they have it in multiple different dimensions. I am going 90 miles an hour. By the way, guys, I think I told you, if I go 90 miles an hour because of being handicapped, they cannot handcuff me. So who cares? I'm going 90 miles an hour. So now you have the two systems. Step forward is on the technology. A step back, use the nature. Again, if you're doing lead, they really want you to do natural systems, openable windows, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in Title 24, that's what is being brought. Here is the technology. You're going through the construction part of the package, and you really want to make sure that the construction strategy, you have it modular, you have an adaptive. By the way, all of these came out from LEED as well. Lightweight and adaptive structure. Hey, you may have another pandemic. No one says, especially because the cross references of the entire country. In less than very, very few weeks, the entire country, after 3 weeks after South Africa, announced that Omicron was there. We now have 20 states in the United States that have Omicron, although, mind you, the Delta hasn't flourished. Yeah, there are states that have Delta pandemic going on, or Delta plus. So, and that was lightweight and adaptive structures. Again, this goes back to that. Hygiene buildings. We have been talking about hygiene, i.e. motion sensors, motion sensors, touchless, no discussion. I forgot, sorry. In the USC building that I work in, they now have a little door kick. I took a photo for you guys. I did not put it in. Apologize. Where you have an element, if this is the door, you have an element that goes in, and there's a little element and is actually screwed on. With your shoes, you actually open this. They've taken all the locks out. So you put your feet on there and kick it. Beautiful for handicaps. And it may not be, no, it will work with a wheelchair as well. But anyway, that was wonderful. So that was very, very new. I really loved it. So given the format that we discussed, modular construction, adaptive reuse, lightweight, and hygiene of the building, digital transformation, ability to work from home, AI. I thought as a nuclear engineer when I came back 36, 7 years ago, I've traveled the world. I came back. I had no job because of the nuclear accidents, especially Chernobyl. I went to AI. There was a lot of AI work. You can see it. Zoom multiplied by 6,000 times. All of these go-to meetings, they have multiplied. Touchless technologies, again, that becomes contacts, etc. The only one issue I'm going to bring up is as follows. It may not be worth it for you to see Bob, who's literally in the next office. You punch in, a video conference comes in, and you will not have to see Bob. You don't have to yell at him or anything. Punch it in, and becomes, again, I watched all the Star Trek like 5 times. But Scotty, beam me up. Scotty, what are you doing? And all these, everything becomes fantastic. Now, to go to the left, architectural approach, nature, self-sufficient strategies, refocusing on green spaces again, low-rise buildings. By the way, remember in last year's, we had one place, they had 1,134 people on one floor, 974 were within the surrounding of this people who got contaminated. And I forgot 95, 97 people got, and like 5 people died. And again, another floor. The question is this, are we going to have high rises? That was the question that we asked. Better quality air control, the air quality, we just discussed it. Have the BPIs, have the, increase the number of air changes. By the way, just to let you know, 6 times, so that means that every 10 times, 10 minutes, the air within the room is recycled. 6 air changes. Hey, make it more. Remember that's every 10 minutes. Remember what Southwest Airlines said. You're doing it every 2-3 minutes. Bill did something in the building, and I'll show you that it increased the air changes. But by the way, that's not an air change from outside. Remember the 50% from outside air we were proposing? This is just the recycling within that chamber, and you're now bleeding outside air. Urban approach, expanding horizontally. You are going to have fun with it. And then, by the way, I don't know if you have, oh yeah, fewer cars, more cycling and walking, etc. Urban farming, decentralization, fewer density cities. All of those simply say hello, go back to LEED, go back to green, all that. It was a fabulous work by these guys. And now if you look at the irony is that this mimics my lecture. During the 14th to 20th century, we did urban renewal, we had sanitary reforms, we had building housing reforms, plague, typhoid, tuberculosis, cholera, and all that was there. God, this mimics, technically it micronized all my lecture into that. There only one issue that I have is that does anybody know, this would be a fantastic pop quiz for you guys. And by the way, I'm just going to bring this back. Architectural and urban story that becomes form, flow, fear, infection. More greener, smarter, sustainable, antivirus built environment. Boy, these two guys did a fantastic work with this. I just love everything that I say for you. But I'm going to go back. Does anybody remember where this trap, where we have trap in the plumbing fixtures and you have that water? If anybody knows, I don't know if my chat button is not up, but I'd love to see if anybody knows. Sewer
gases.
One more time? Yes, but there was one more. What happens is that in England, what was happening is that all of these sewers were going into these channels in England. They were going there. The gases are obviously, what was funny is that rats, cockroaches, they were picking up the fresh air, they were entering to the room. That was, the rats was more than the smell, just an FYI. Very good. I think Ali Badiis had a question on audio. I hope he's okay. She's okay. Okay. Anyway, thank you for that. It was more than just gases. It was the rats, etc. By the way, just to let you know, in the high rise that I work in, cockroaches, very, very long cockroaches, go through the 24-inch sewer of the building, they travel through the vent piping and through the sewer pipe 40 floors up. Then they find themselves in a water closet. They do a little, remember that Poseidon's adventure? They swim across the water. They are now crawling on the 40th floor of a high rise. Now, one of the discussions that I had with Bill, and he told me, and there was a discussion that simply says that when a request comes to an architect or the client goes to the architect and simply says, I have a military program, I got a biological level 1, but the safety level 1, 2, 3, 4, they simply say, okay, by the way, I did design right after 9/11, the entire country was subdivided to X number of labs, and each one had to have X number of biosafety labs. So in case there was a biological attack, and they would address the issue and they would fight it within that region. So one, UCLA was one of them, and I had to bid this job. We didn't get the job with a design build package. So this is NIH, a very, very, very fantastic manual. Actually, Bill sent me this, and it has a fantastic element for everybody in the team, from the architect, engineers, civil engineers, material selections, et cetera, et cetera. I just simply put one part of it, which was the mechanical component of it, where there's an animal control, population control, occupancy, lighting, outdoor, et cetera. It was a very, very fantastic element that simply says, and by the way, at the end of the day, your offices, your laboratory, your restaurants, is now considered an infectious possible space. Now you have to control it. this is a fantastic, by the way, it's about 1,000 page. I can send you, and I'm definitely know that you could find it online yourself. But that was one. So some of the examples, and I'm going to go, and I don't know if Bill is in the team, but if he's not, I will speak. I don't know, Bill, if you're there, just say hi. He's not. So what is happening is the following. I got commissioned. I have other examples. If we finish this early, I will give you some of the, this space is they package elements, they package boxes and small boxes, about 14 people working in there. And one of the items was this, they were commissioned to invite this 14 people to come in and package these and send it to the world. There's a software package. So it was decided for them. And by the way, one of the items that I saw was that Google had done one item. They have this little robot, which they were discussing for this place too. The robot that simply actually has like I have a little ring right now for the so it has a ring, it has a UV ring, has a UV ring at the very bottom. It literally sweeps exactly like the broom does, that automatic broom does. It simply goes out the entire space and covers XYZ and makes sure that it does, goes throughout the whole floor and simply sanitizes the space. It literally kills all the contaminant. This particular location, there was a massive amount of work. Remember, we discussed it was kryptonite, krypton chlorine, 222 was them. This is the material that was used. 10 of them were selected. These are for open, unique offices. This was storage, and this is the population. 10 was there. The question was this. Technical scientific question was this. When humans are there, when a janitor actually goes in, it completely shuts off, or as the motion sensor picks up that the system is on, a motion sensor picks it up for 30 minutes, everything goes down, is blind. All 10 of them, even in this office. For 30 minutes later, the system comes back on. If it sees no motion sensors, it's cleaning or does the UV and kills, not kills, modifies the DNA of the virus. So the other item is this, that the question is this: the janitor comes about 2 in the morning, maybe 12 at night, cleans the space, leaves. So now this building knows, this room knows that at 12:30, nobody is going to show up till 6 in the morning. The question is this: I have a UV system. It has certain level of propagation. Last year, if you were a good student, you would remember that you need 600 microjoules of energy. Joule is energy. Remember Joule's theorem, or the energy from physics? Microjoules of energy is required for 1 centimeter square of air for it to, as it passes, to neutralize that particulate. One of the question is, because this thing is so novice, so new, we actually took one of these units in my office, and this was the unit that actually came in was this. The controls were here, was done by somebody else. I did the structural analysis because it's about 35 pounds. Standing there, by the way, is $10,000 a piece. So I really firmly put it in there. It actually is placed in a 2x2 setting. Okay, it goes into the tile. So it goes there, and I designed the system for support packages and the controls, etc. Controls was done by another group. Sorry. So this is the package, and underneath this right here, Krypton has, by the way, if Superman shows up there, he cannot do anything, okay? He's neutralized because it's kryptonite, right? So kryptonite chlorine actually is propagates. And by the way, every one of these was 500 watts, okay? 500 watts energy. goes in there. But the question is this. By the way, you can convert the watts to joules very, very, very simply. But forget it. The question is, Bill wanted to know how much joules or the effectiveness was coming out at 10 feet. Now he has this going at 45 degrees. So what would be what? 1 divided by 0.707, which would be 14 feet. 14 feet directions in every location. How much joules? Now at the same time, he wanted to get that joules identified and from there have the punch. And then, by the way, how many hours did he need? How much energy did he need? So this was done. So I simply we did this. This was literally put together in back of my office. This was a Jimmy for an air conditioning. I simply jimmied it up per se. We created some elements and we rented this and this baby. And we put this, that's your kryptonite. And this is the elements. This is the connection elements. And by the way, when the unit arrived, there was no component for you to attach 32 pounds. So we created that element, and that's how it was done. Then if you go back, this is where the placement, as you saw the graph, this is the ceiling locations. And at the same time, this was our element. We actually did 10 feet because that was the format. And this is the back of my office. And we had to do it from 2 in the morning till, no, I'm sorry. We started at 12 till about 3 because then we wanted pitch black. There was one issue. The LED lights was here and here. We actually wrapped them. We went to the ladder and we couldn't turn it off, but that was the landlord. If we could turn it off, we could have turned it off. So we did have some contamination of UV from surrounding and we had to blind it off. And we went up and down every 2 feet, up and down. We actually did an XY. So if you look at, by the way, this is Bill. So if you look at this element, we went 2 feet vertical. So this is the light fixture. And we did 2 feet. So we did an XY. So if this is 0, 0 and 0, 0. So we went 20 feet. We actually measured it and we did this throughout on the floor. So we took that data. I wanted to get the data for him. He says he's afraid of the contamination and it would not be a very good for at least for this setting. And he had the measurement device. And by the way, this was a reflection of that. He had it computerized, etc. And that's how he would find out how much joules was at the worst case, which remember 14 feet, 10 feet on the center, etc. 14 feet radius that he had. We were looking at how much joules it was, so he could convert it to how many hours this unit had to be on. If it was not, he was going to beg the janitorial to extend to come in early, so more contamination or decontamination was going to occur. This was all happening in back of our office. And by the way, at some point about 3:30 in the morning, I collapsed. And but anyway, we had to make sure that this was balanced. But anyway, that was our experience that we did. By the way, there was another issue. We have all these tables. What do you do with the tables? All of these are creating shadows at the bottom. So he purchased these wands from the same manufacturer and essentially scanning them slowly over the particulates. So that they could invite 14 people to come back to work. All these elements, okay? I will not reveal what the cost was at this point. But remember the other issue. Remember we said if this was the room and here's the air conditioning, it comes in, supply comes in, and the return goes back in, right? And that's happening. And then if you, for the sake of argument, if you have a UV here, what he did for about $900 a piece, he puts these elements in different rooms. What happens with this is this: if you have, let me go do my fancy thing. Hold on. So Come on. So imagine you have this room, assume this was your room, and air conditioning was doing the continuous rotation. The issue that this creates is that this is doing the return air here. It has a HEPA filter, right? At least it's picking up something, right? And you have the UV here. Why? We are in a high rise. We are on X number of floors, and we have no control over the building. This lease was done a long time ago, and they could not change, and they have to stay there for so long. So they've spent X amount of money, and every one of these are different CFMs. I forgot, I did take a picture of it, the CFM that it goes. By the way, it goes forever. This goes on and on. One of the other things I liked about, because I'm coming up to 5:39, I really want to, I know we don't have that many crowd, but I still want to open up for the discussion. I liked, again, God bless those two authors, their conclusion, their outlook. I couldn't find a better wording than what I see here. There is no insight with COVID-19. My third daughter, who is working at NIH, just called me, and they are working post-pandemic concepts. I was with a client yesterday in Studio City. If you're looking at the backyard, they want to do this structural here, this structural there. So I'm walking with her. She had COVID. She was a vaccinated person. Fantastic. She's alive. But she had COVID. She did get to ICU, not to the ventilators, and she's alive. Guess what? Every 30 feet of walking, she had to sit down and take her breath. Exactly when you get a heart attack, part of your heart actually dysfunctions. By the way, just to let you know, if you simply take a skin of our lungs and you spread it out, it becomes a full tennis court. And that is the area that each one of these hyper elements, all this square foot of the areas that we actually occupy in our lungs, that's our lungs. Slowly, COVID takes a portion of this, cigarette takes a portion of this, other elements, pollutions take a portion of this. The question is, you have only this much area left. And the COVID, she could not breathe after 30 feet of 30 steps of walking. So that's one. And remember, we are in Omicron, and we got still more Latin, Greek alphabets left. Is going to be here. The post-pandemic and architecture. What happens to urbanism? What happens to us? And by the way, I am absolutely surprised. I am the only person who is just being this drum. I cannot find. God bless these two. These two guys are exempted. And God bless a couple of architects that are in New York and a couple of places that I saw. They are talking, the motion is there. Not to the effectiveness that I like. So essentially, when you go back, says more effective, healthy design and planning is required. We need to face the pandemic and actually fight it, right? Just face it at the same time. So the question is, therefore, is the transformation in our physical and built environment temporarily reaction to a new normal? I love this word. There is a new normal, and we have to live with it. I can tell you, if you're not going to go back to Walmart, you're not going to go back to Macy's. I just bought 2 shirts and a shoes on Black Friday. I love it to death. They were cheap, and I did not move out of my office. Am I going to do that next year? Of course I'm going to do it again. So that was part of all these process. By the way, I am giving up my lecture section of of my office. I'm going to do Zoom, or if somebody wants to invite me, I'll go there. But I am not going to go because the Zoom is there. The only problem is that my jokes are not funny anymore because I don't know if they're funny, unfortunately. And the other thing is, I found out, although I'm handicapped, I can clap because there is a little symbolism right here by this guy. You can actually chat or or clap or applaud or do whatever. I'll just do that. Who knows? But I still got to work with Zoom and identify for a certain level of laughter levels or funniness. Unfortunately, I can't pick up any more emotions. So these are some of the questions. Nevertheless, certain questions are still there, a unique lesson. Are we going to come back next year and add more lessons? God bless you, absolutely. Are we going to transform? I'm going to give you one item. I and Bill got interviewed by a high-rise that had 80,000 square feet. What I and Bill said to that individual is, we did not get hired. I guess we scared them. I think that's what happened. Are the policymakers, again, remember, there were policymakers. Remember the transom windows? Remember the mayor of New York said, all of these street vendors and all of these street, they're going to be there forever. It's going to become another Europe. They're going to stay there. So planners, etc. The issue is that engineers, I can tell you that I did one seminar with them. It was my only comment for you all, somebody says they were not there. I'm so sorry. So at the end of the day, we are there. We have not reached herd immunity. We still have in every country, they don't want to get there. We barely touched 60%. Fortunately, a small percentage of our population, the young kids are picking it up, etc. I pray that we will learn more. And I pray whatever we discussed here, and those who will pick it up from the YouTube, they will insert more thoughts. And I pray more people like those guys at Elsevier Publications will write those articles. And if you could, please do this. And then in LEAD, we had something called LHF, low-hanging fruits. Pick them up from whatever we discussed. Put the MERV 13, increase and talk to the boys who are doing your Title 24s, modify the Title 24s to the nth degree, just to make sure that you get more air chances, et cetera, et cetera. I would love to get your input. And besides that, if you all are going to leave or shortly, Merry Christmas, stay healthy, and please hug anyone that you like, because life is too short. Anyway, is there any discussion? And I'm going to open up this thing to everyone. And if you want to unmute yourself, please do. And I am going to get for the last, just see if there is any input, negative, positive, in any format as you wish. Going none. I just want to go back to the following items that I had here. There's a little more slides that I'm just going to bring up. Is we need to have a uniform method so that we could coalesce everybody's thinking. Again, please do not simply put an item like the high school that I mentioned to just satisfy. The science of it is there. The other item that I like to say is the following. Again, I like to scare you with the following. If you take the word patient out and you take the CDC's statements, it is a mandate. It is an absolute mandate. Whatever you do to the personnel for the air handling system is installed and maintained. I'm going to go back to one more item. Stay with me. This is what's happening. If you have a space and you have put this MERV 13 in there, now this filter has to be exchanged every so often. By the way, they get a saturation point, correct? The issue that you have, if this filter has been collecting the disease, i.e. the virus, now that filter has to be treated as a contaminated element. You can take it out and place it on a chamber, and 24 hours later, go ahead and reuse it, not a problem. However, the maintenance part is one. I can tell you the following: the only section of the code that talks about the architecture and it's actually in the body of the code, is this simply said it was on the smoke control system, which was around 2004. There's a section because the buildings are moving. Every year you have to verify your smoke control because all the holes, all the elements, all the boxes, all the doors and opens, the windows that you have created from the remodel and or the building has compensated and has been moving because of the soil consolidation. Smoke control has to be tested. Question for you: if you put that in and you put the system, you simply want to say, because CDC says it has to be installed and maintained, you have that blur on your page one of your architectural drawings. Don't forget, hierarchy of the controls was there. The most obviously eliminated, substituted, etc. And this will be used in any court case because that is like a poster. By the way, just to go back, I looked up Gensler's and all the major architects. They have used blurbs from here or there, but mostly advertising. There was one more set of articles that I did not download, but the AIA has created a set of articles for preparing for reopening. It was it was for retail, for schools, for offices, for every category. The articles are there. There is a lot of repeats, and some of them go back and sort of what we call focus on the schools, but there is a lot of similarity. Again, they did it, but unfortunately, the only statement that they had was very, very minute element as air handling systems shall be more efficient, but not specific enough. As an architect, the main technical person, the main person who gathers and all the engineers and hires them, etc., you are still part of that team. If the mechanical guy did not study or analyze, do whatever he is supposed to per CDC, and you did not push it, you will be, regardless, even if the owners have signed the contracts of the engineers, you still will be part of that boat, of the liability. So let me go back. The mission statement. I said engineers because, by the way, this note was done for ASHRAE for you. All the professional mission statement must create a new design, new thinking process for an indoor environment safety of occupants. The professionals, I didn't change the word engineer to architect. Design must provide confidence for general public to go back to indoor building environment. I'm going to give you one item. The vice president of one of the buildings that I work with, he said that most of the Fortune 500 who are tenants have given notice that please come back, the building is safe, etc., etc. Pure mutiny. Nobody showed up. Again, it goes back to the confidence. And by the way, remember that wording that article had, which simply says fear, confidence, etc., etc. That's what you're building. You're building that confidence. I was not very, very happy with the architectural firms who discussed how wonderful environmental stuff they were. I believed that they were all just showing off, that they haven't missed the boat. By the way, if you look for the word legal COVID-19, almost everybody's cousin is having an article or a blurb on COVID-19. And most of them have some of the CDC issues that they brought in. So really, today and tomorrow will be your task to make this right. And then, by the way, this is what your battle will look like. That's what you're battling. It's 0.6, by the way, 0.06 to 0.12 micron, but since everybody has published 0.12, I'll stay there. But anyway, there was one article that I believe it was here, and you can pick that up. The way, I don't want to trigger it, I believe it is a 4 or 5 minutes item. It simply said that how does this virus travel, go into the lungs from the individual back into the apparel place, and how these coronas, these crowns, are simply contacting the body and they leach to the body. Given that note, I got 6 minutes. I want to ask it one more time. I'm just going to wish Richard, Roger, David, K, Robert, Ali, Robert, K, again, I'm sorry, Diane, Rita, wish everybody Merry Christmas. And I can go on for more, but I got more slides, but I thought I should stop here because every one of these will open up another discussion. But remember the 116 days, the life expectancy of the virus, that it regenerates on its own. That's a scary number. And another item is that every COVID patient is technically, by the way, every person who actually has taken vaccine may be a carrier. And we are all become incubators for the virus. Anyway, given that note, I'm going to go back. I don't know if Jeff is there. I do know he always asks me to make sure.
Yes, I am.
Jeff, give your spiel. The fact that they got to go and get to use.
Yeah, so as was mentioned earlier, just email Marilee and Edgar at AIAOC.org. You can email me as well if you want to. And just give us your member number if you can, please. It just helps us out. It saves time. And that's it. It's just that simple.
Yeah, there's always, I'm going to leave with this. Please wear a mask, even if you're vaccinated. This will be over. And thank you all. Merry Christmas to everyone. I see a chat. I don't know if it's a question. Oh, thank you, everybody. Wish you all Merry Christmas. Very good. I hope to see you next year. And please advertise for those who want to take the PA, the Programming and Analysis. Is next week. I'll get the info, or I can pass it to to Jeff, or you could go to AIALA. That's there. And we are putting programs for USC. We are putting a series. It's going to be like 4 different Saturday sessions and for different topics. And anyway, that you could get it from USC, and I will definitely pass it on. And every time that I say something, please go to my LinkedIn, and in my LinkedIn, I advertise most of stuff anyway. Otherwise, God bless you all. I will see you hopefully next year, and stay safe. Mask up, please.
Thanks,
Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk. Marilee, she's not there, but please give my best.
I sure will.
Hi. Let me tell everybody, this is a digital hug. You guys take care.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.